and welcome into Big Talk, college sports with a Midwest perspective, blue collar and blue blood. I am Sam Sprunger. That's Tony Hollinsworth. Tony, it's Monday. It's the regular season of the Big Ten basketball season is complete.
Yep.
Now we move to the Christmas time.
It's tournament time
of the basketball season, because it is just feels like every day, starting on basically some major conferences are doing Tuesday, but at least Wednesday through basically
the weekend,
the end of April or the beginning of April. There's going to be basketball on just constantly, and I love it.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Iowa made me eat my words, because if you remember, I was like, "No, they're not gonna do it. Nebraska's
too good.
No, looking at them historically, like Iowa's been great, but the last couple of years, I don't think they can pull it off." Iowa said, "Oh, hold my beer, sir. We're gonna prove you wrong in that matter."
Iowa thumps Nebraska on Sunday. And Tony, we've talked about Mike DeCourcy's bracketology last Tuesday. I talked to my co-host and I talked on Believe in Purdue in depth about what Big Ten teams and things like that, and Purdue especially, obviously, since it's Believe in Purdue. But we talked about all the Big Ten teams that were being represented in DeCourcy's bracketology. Nebraska was in an opening round game in Dayton. On Tuesday. And now we stand 6 days later. They're not even at the Big Ten tournament now. How insane is this basketball season?
Oh, it's nuts. But again, that's kind of the beauty of it, because you look at every year, there's always some type of parity that happens. You look at coming into this season, it was like, okay, we kind of expected Purdue to have a quote down year, and realistically, they have had a down year compared to what they have.
You know what? I am so happy this is a down year.
I say that's still pretty good for Purdue,
because 21-10 is still not bad.
I say, considering that's a down year, that's still a really good down year. I say you're not going to pull a Nick Saban and be like, "No, we deserve to be in. We're in a rebuild."
Oh, we're already in.
But I mean, Purdue's having a quote down year. Michigan State is on the up and up once again. Michigan, a complete and total turnaround from what they were last year, where they weren't even in the tournament either, or if they were like bottom of the barrel and got bounced the first round to, they were the 3 seed. And, Wisconsin has kind of made a comeback. UCLA makes a good first impression now in its first season in the Big Ten. Oregon started out really hot, kind of fell off a little bit, but I mean, they've won 7 in a row. They're tied with Michigan State for the longest win streak in the Big Ten right now. So it's been an interesting college basketball season, at least for the regular season in the Big Ten. We've seen a lot of upsets. Obviously, it's not Big Ten related, but Alabama on the last second shot upset Auburn just a couple of nights ago. So I mean, that's the beauty of college basketball, though, is any team, doesn't matter the rank, doesn't matter the place, any team can get a win on any given day, and that's the beauty of it. And I know we've talked about that before. With sometimes you can have that in football. Sometimes that one lucky player, that one lucky team gets the squeak away. Now with basketball, it's any moment, any time, any team can make that happen.
I think the difference between the 12-team playoff for football and even if you keep it at 12, I know they're going to push that out to 14, maybe even 16 in the near future. But let's say just the 12. You will never get a team hit a heater as a 10 seed and win the national championship. No. I would be shocked. I might even tattoo "shocked" on my forehead. I'm not sure. But the point being is you get into that tournament, though, you can get a heater to where an 11 seed's going to the national championship game, or they're at least making it to the Final Four, or they're, whatever. 16 seeds beating 1 seeds.
They say look at NC State, and heck, they just fired their coach yesterday too.
NC State had to win their entire conference tournament on 5 straight days, and they did. And then they had to win. They won 4 straight then in the NCAA tournament to make the Final Four.
Yep.
yeah, so like that, those are real things. I mean, if you look back in, what is it, the '83 NC State Wolfpack team, the Jimmy V coach team,
Hmm.
they had to be, and get this, they had to win the ACC tournament to get into the tournament. At this time, they didn't have 64 teams. I believe it was what's what 40 teams, I think was the tournament at the time. So it wasn't automatic bids, like or there weren't many automatic bids, and NC State was not making the tournament if they didn't win the ACC tournament. Ralph Sampson was the 2-time National Player of the Year at Virginia, and they had just blown out NC State in the in the regular season. NC State had to beat them in the championship game just to make it to the NCAA tournament. Then they had to beat them in the final, or beat them in the Elite Eight to get to the Final Four. Like, and just that is a real true thing. It's never going to happen in football, though. You can't. There's too many people you have to rely on, and stuff like that. That it just, I don't see that ever happening.
And I think too and I know it's a apples to oranges comparison, but when you look at football, you can tell the difference in the talents, and you can tell the difference in the coaching schemes. Like that to me is where you see more of athleticism usually take over when it comes to opponents playing on opponents. Now, when it comes to
Jimmy's
basketball,
and Joe's take over in football more than the X's and O's.
Yeah, and you can look at basketball, and I'm not saying that there's still not, great athletes and, guys that are just going to absolutely go off, because they're 100% will. But you can have any guy have a really good night, and you can even have guys on the basketball court that have a really bad night on the other side. And as long as and with basketball, you have the opportunity to capitalize on that. If you look at football, like if you're down to your second string quarterback probably not going to win you the game, especially if you're down. That's probably not going to happen. But you could bring in a guy off the bench in basketball. Maybe he gets a hot hand. Maybe he scores, 10 points. It's like, oh crap, this guy might actually be what we need in this game to make it work. So
going a 10-0 personal run,
maybe.
Well, you look at, if you look at the 11 seed in the Big Ten tournament, Tony. They have 2 lottery picks in their starting lineup, and they are the 11th best team in the Big Ten. And honestly, maybe somewhere, I mean, they're no higher than that.
Yeah.
They might be even a little lower.
Yeah. And funny enough, so this will be a rematch too, because Rutgers actually beat USC not too long ago in Piscataway. So this will be a little bit of a
Saturday, wasn't it?
It was
no.
I say no. Yeah,
USC played.
They played. Does it have a date on here? They played February 23rd, so they played not that long ago. Yeah, and Rutgers won by 10 in that game.
So yeah, I mean, we'll look at the bracket here in just a second, or in a couple of minutes, but let's talk about the outright, and this is what got the top 4 seeds a little bit mussed up, because Michigan State thumped Michigan in the Breslin Center. A little kerfuffle at the end, Tony. Everybody knows that the outgoing seniors for Michigan State, they all get pulled out of the game, and they kiss the Spartan at center court before they go off to a standing ovation. Well,
according to Dusty May, he didn't know about that.
Oh my gosh, you're living under a rock if that's the case. But my point being is, on this,
his words,
there were 2 Michigan players standing squarely in the middle of center court. Yep. They watched a senior kiss it in front of them, and then there was a little kerfuffle. I forget who it was that went, and
I think it was Holloman.
Yeah, it was Holloman. Trey Holloman decided he was going to go have some words with those 2 Wolverines, and he was very quick. He was very quick to start shoving.
Yes, he
and was. That's my guess is there were some words coming from the opposition that triggered him to decide he was going to get a little pushing match. I'm not even sure how that even played out. I don't know that they gave any technicals. If they did, it wasn't that big of a deal. I mean, it was.
Yeah.
But come on, Dusty,
Yeah.
you're better than that.
He did. Those were his exact words. He's like, "Oh, I didn't even know that was the thing." I'm like, first off, man, you were there at IU. You weren't. Now he was a player, but he was more on the sideline because he even had said, "I want to become a coach and I want to learn under Bobby Knight."
He was a manager,
and he was
that practiced with them. Yes,
correct. And so it's like, all right, you were there, and I think they said so. He was there in '95. That's when Tom Izzo took over Michigan State as head coach. They, I think, played a game there in '97. So he saw this 2 years in. They had already kind of established this tradition under Tom Izzo. And then, he's had to have seen it at some point throughout his time of being a coach, being an assistant, everything like that. You come into this year as the head coach of Michigan. You can't tell me that, oh, I didn't know that was a thing. Come on, man. You can't tell me that. And again, like you said, you watched another player already do it. And then your two guys got to, I didn't know it was tradition. Dusty. Come on.
Even at that point, you don't know, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
You see that and you go, oh, guys, get off, move back.
Right.
Because maybe that's a thing for all of them, or maybe it's just that one senior. Don't know, but we're not going to get in the way.
Yeah. And here's the other thing too. That's also where one of those, you don't maybe always rely on your players, but if your players, are doing that, you got to be like, what are y'all doing? Like, what is this? Oh, well, they have this thing. Oh, don't mess with that. I don't care what the rivalry is. I don't care what the beef is. And obviously they were getting smashed 52-28 at halftime. So they probably had a little bit to say when it came to that. It's like, don't do that. It's not worth it. Don't cause something to be more than what it is.
Yeah, it was a fun thing to watch the clip of, because it's calm, and I didn't even read the headline to the clip. I just clicked on it. Was automatically played on the app when I opened it up, and I'm watching. And I'm like, why are those Michigan guys standing on half court?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, because they knew.
Because you could see the senior coming over, and you could see the crowd was giving them an ovation. I'm like, oh well, they and then I look down and see the caption, and it says Holloman has words with Michigan. I'm like, oh, they got in an argument, a big kerfuffle.
Well, what kind of threw me off was when I first saw it, I saw the Michigan player standing there, and then there's no Michigan people around him as he's trying to do the free throw. I'm like, that's really weird. And then this camera slowly started to pan up, and then I see, okay, there's the two Michigan guys at half court, and then Holloman pushing them. I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense, because I was like, that's really weird.
Yeah, but Michigan State does get the outright title with their thumping of the Michigan Wolverines at the Breslin Center on Sunday. Then, with everything that happened on Saturday, it made for a very interesting looking at Big Ten tournament bracket. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to take our break a little early, Tony, and get to the other side and look at this bracket and kind of break it down a little bit and kind of give our thoughts. Maybe not per game, but kind of give us give our insights. So we're going to go ahead and take a break right now for the audio podcast, and then we'll be right back to talk about the Big Ten tournament and what it looks like in Indianapolis this coming week. You are listening to Big Talk on the Believe and Lounge Sports Network. Okay, Tony, we're back.
We are back.
We are
talking some Big Ten tournament bracket.
We have a bracket, Tony. It is a good-looking bracket. It's a very perplexing bracket, but this is the bracket for this tournament is starts on Wednesday with Northwestern Minnesota, Iowa, Ohio State, USC, and Rutgers. Okay, so these three games, you look at them, and my take on the Big Ten tournament in the past is that first day is kind of a clunker because you're getting the bottom teams there to be able to move on. And now that these teams had to play to make it, these games become a little bit more intriguing. What you think?
Yeah, they do, because I mean, for a lot of these teams, like we talked about, even with NC State last year, now all of these teams have an opportunity. If they're a bubble team, if they're on the fringe, or even if they're projected to not make it at all, they can all but secure that potential if they're able to make a deep run and potentially win the Big Ten as a whole throughout the tournament. So I'm not going to say it's impossible. Now, I know, as we've talked about throughout the entirety of the season, with the exception of Ohio State, all of those teams between Northwestern, Minnesota, Iowa, USC, and Rutgers, we had talked about, all of them were kind of up for, it was kind of a juggle effect of, okay, who's going to be the odd man out of not making it potentially in the tournament if they slip up or if they lose to
I did not
another
have
team.
Nebraska on my bingo card.
I didn't either. I thought Nebraska was going to potentially make it out of it. I thought Iowa might have potentially been the team that was out.
I said USC.
I could have very easily saw USC not making it either. So I mean,
I also at one point had Northwestern.
Hey, I said the same thing. You're like, well, wait a minute, think about this now.
And they're the 13 seed instead. So I like this because they had to play to get into it. I mean, I really do. You look at Northwestern; they beat Maryland on a last-second shot. They have had some. They've been decimated by injuries, and they have still been very competitive. I know they finished 7-13 in the Big Ten. I know this.
Yeah.
But they still had been very, very competitive in most of their games. They thumped Ohio State. Now, Ohio State's playing on Wednesday as well, but Ohio State beat Purdue. So like all these teams, Minnesota beat back-to-back ranked teams to kick off their wins in the Big Ten this season. USC went to Illinois and beat them after Illinois had gone to Oregon and given Oregon the thumping of a lifetime in front of the Eugene crowd.
Yeah.
USC went to Illinois Champaign and beat them.
Yep.
Rutgers, we mentioned them. They are the 11th-seeded team in the Big Ten tournament, and they have 2 lottery picks. God help us if those lottery picks all of a sudden start clicking. I'm not saying that they're gonna. But, stranger things have happened. If those 2 start clicking and they both blow up for 30, watch out. Purdue needs to watch out.
Yeah. And honestly, you can make that argument for any of the teams in throughout the entire tournament, because I feel like, if, like you said, if both of them can, and even if you can get 5 points from each player for the rest of your team. Let's see, every team has about 12 players on it or so.
12 to 15.
12 to 15. Okay. So if you have 2 go off for 30, that's 60. If you can even get 5 from, say, 5 other players, that's 85 points. Most time in college, that can darn near get you the win, if not really, really close to it. So I feel like it's possible out of them. But I feel like with Purdue as well, and you would have better insight on this too, I really don't know what to make of Purdue right now, because they had that weird losing streak. Now, like we said, they weren't losing by a large margin, by no means. They weren't getting blown out at any point.
Except IU,
which, Bobby Knight. I'm chalking it up to the ghost of Bobby Knight.
Excuse me.
But the fact that they lost 6 of their last 7, or no, 5 of their last 6?
5 of their last 7.
5 of their last 7. So I mean, that to you, without going super in depth, what is your thoughts on that and this Purdue team coming into the tournament? Are you a little worried because of that? Because I mean, you have to think about it. They have a fairly tough road to kind of a deep run, because they have to win whoever faces out of USC and Rutgers. Not necessarily easy out of both of those, because both of them are probably going to be playing hard. And then let's say, for hypotheticals, they beat whoever that is, then they have to face Michigan again, who they split the series with during the regular season. So who knows which Michigan team you're going to get when you make that run.
They lost to Illinois on Friday, but they played a very, very good game. They really did. Braden Smith had 18 points, 13 assists, or 12 assists and 9 rebounds. He was a rebound short of a triple double. He had 12 assists, 3 turnovers. So his 4-to-1 ratio. That's a great ratio. Trey Kaufman-Red, 29 points. Fletcher Lawyer, 14 points. The problem was Illinois is one of the, and I've heard multiple people saying this, Illinois is probably the most athletic team in the Big Ten Conference, period. Like, bar none. They are number one. And we've talked multiple times that they're like a roller coaster because they can go out and play Oregon and beat them by 30 plus and then come home and lose to USC.
Right.
Purdue controlled that game for probably about 30 minutes of the game. Like, outright controlled the game. Not back and forth. They had a firm lead and were controlling. Illinois ended up 11 of 30 for threes, and 3 and maybe even 4 came in the 13-1 run that catapulted Illinois to the win. So honestly, I think that 4-game losing streak has nothing to do with that loss against Illinois. I think they're separate from one another. I think, I talked about that. I really just think Purdue was in a huge slump, and they have deficiencies. They have big deficiencies in places.
Right.
But as you said, we knew they were not going to be last year's team. You can't be.
Right.
But you know what? They're pretty darn good, even though they're not the team that they were last year. So honestly, I think the Michigan loss to Michigan State helped Purdue. And the reason why is they match up to Michigan better than they do Maryland.
Yeah.
Now, it's not saying that it's an easier game. I just think they match up better. They played very well against Michigan both games. Blew them out in Mackey, lost by 2 at Chrysler. So I really do think that they match up pretty well with Michigan, and they have a just as much of an ability to win that game against Michigan if they play in the quarterfinals on Friday. So honestly, I'm not as worried as some people might. Some people may say I'm a fool. I don't care.
Yeah, but I mean, at least for Purdue's sake, and I mean, it might be one of those. It might be a little weird. At least Purdue is in a good enough spot. Even if they do lose, it's not like they're going to be out of the NCAA tournament.
Oh no, they're in the tournament. They're in the tournament.
So yeah, I mean, will it maybe help their spot as far as seeding goes? Probably, because you win the Big Ten, but it's not like they're going to be out.
If they can win a couple of games, they'll secure a better 4 seed. Maybe they'll move up to higher on the 4 line. I don't know that they'll ever get any higher than that, but it's not saying that they can't. But I think I've mentioned this before. I know I have on Believe in Purdue. Matt Painter and the Boilermakers, they care about the games. They don't care whether they win the Big Ten tournament.
Right.
Because that's a lot of energy being expended in a very short amount of time. That's 4 games in 4 days.
Yeah.
You got to win 4 games in 4 days to win that Big Ten tournament. 3 and 3 if you're a double bye team. But honestly, I think they don't need the Big Ten tournament, so it's not as high a priority. They'll try to win their games. They're going to play to win their games. They're not going to ever say, "Oh, we're going to lose this on purpose." But they're not going to be disappointed if they end up getting beat by Michigan in the second on Friday, or whenever they do end up getting beat, if they get beat.
Right. No, and I do agree, because I think a lot of times I'm not going to say that the tournaments are useless, but I mean for a lot of the
teams that are already in, they are.
Yeah, I say when we were kind of looking at it, pretty much everyone from Oregon up is pretty much safe. Now IU would probably need to make a little bit of a deep run.
Honestly, I think IU's in.
You think so?
Yeah, I think they are.
So then that would leave Ohio State maybe
Ohio
on the
State
outside
could
looking
get
in.
Yeah, that's about it. I mean, it's not saying that Rutgers couldn't. If they won 1, 2, 3, maybe if they got to Saturday, maybe, but they're still really, they don't have a really good record overall. So yeah, basically I think maybe Ohio State. So there are 10 teams that can make this tournament.
Yeah,
the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, so realistically, somebody's just fighting for that 10th spot
Yeah.
more than anything.
And I think, honestly, it's Ohio State or it's nobody. Honestly, I really don't think it. Ohio State has a lot to gain.
Mm-hmm.
I think they have to beat Illinois, or I think they have to beat Illinois to be in the tournament. I personally, but I think they could beat Iowa, and if they play well, maybe get into one of those games in Dayton.
Yeah, I could definitely see that for sure.
But let's look at this bracket overall. Who from, let's say, okay, so from Wednesday or Thursday.
Okay.
I've seen a lot of people say the higher seeds aren't going to be represented in the championship game. I want you to just give me one out of the teams on Wednesday, Thursday that you think with where they've got to go into the tournament going forward that could make it to the championship game and surprise some people.
Ooh, I'm torn between two.
Okay.
I'm torn between Illinois and I'm torn between Wisconsin. And again, and that's no really mark against anybody else. Like
Right.
we talked about, pretty much everybody from at least above Ohio State is pretty much safe of getting in. I don't know with Indiana as much. Are they going to be able to make that deep run? Are they going to be able to beat Oregon? And then you have to face Michigan State. Not saying it's possible. Heck, they beat Michigan State in an upset earlier this year, so it's possible. Oregon's on the up and up, so maybe, like we said, Purdue doesn't really need to win the Big Ten tournament, so we don't know how seriously are they going to take it. Wisconsin, maybe, just because of how well they've played over the season, and I think for Illinois might, because I feel like for Illinois it would be more of a statement of, while we've had a roller coaster season, we're still a team to fear. So I think if I had to pick one, I'll probably go with Illinois.
I would say Illinois as well. Purdue is the other team that I would consider. And it's not because I'm a Purdue fan, even though it doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
They have two of the best players in the conference in their starting five.
Mm-hmm.
And for them to, and when they get hot, they can play with darn near anybody in the country, let alone just the conference. So, do I think they're going to hit a heater? I don't know so, but I sure would love to see it.
Right.
Because they could, could they hit a heater and hit 4 in a row? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But Illinois is turning it on at the right time, and that's why I think they're the one of the Wednesday, Thursday teams that, to me, has the best chance to get to Sunday. But it's one of those, the Maryland game, it could stumble Illinois pretty hard.
Yeah.
But the one thing Maryland still confuses me on is how they can play so well at home and then struggle so much. And then it's not near as bad as what it's been in the past.
Yeah.
But they struggle on the road comparatively. Now, I know that Indianapolis is a neutral site, but goodness gracious, they're 5-5 on the road.
I say, but yeah, how much realistically does that home court advantage really do for them to be able to do that? Like that's kind of the crazy part that I think a lot of people may not always take into account, is the fact that, home court advantage can really make or break you. I mean, heck, look at how hard it is to play in the Breslin Center. I think they even did an interview with all of the Big Ten coaches here recently, and they said probably one of the hardest places that they don't want to play in is the Mackey Center, Mackey Arena, just purely because of how difficult it is to play there, because of the crowd, because of how small it is and the echoes and whatnot.
Dalton said as much too.
Yeah. So, I mean, it doesn't surprise me that, that's the case, but it is kind of weird that they struggle that much on the road.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be a fun tournament to watch, but we will be back on Friday to talk about what's gone on thus far and talk about the rest of it going forward. But Tony, go ahead and tell everybody how they can find us?
You can find us on Facebook at Big Talk. That's B1G Talk. You can also find us on TikTok, Instagram, and X, all at B1G_Talk. You can find us 2 times a week on the All Sports All Plays Network, which you can get on any app store, on any phone that you may or may not have, completely up to you. And you would best believe that Sam is going to upload the podcast wherever you like to get them, including the Believe Podcast Network, as well as the Lounge Sports Network, which falls under the Lounge Media Group.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this Monday edition of Big Talk College Sports with a Midwest perspective. Blue collar and blue blood. For Tony Hollinsworth, I'm Sam Sprunger. See you on Wednesday.